Okay, I'd like to thank the Secretary of State for joining me today,
It's great to be with you.
Antony
Thank you.
Blinken. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Fisayo Fosudo. I'm a visual storyteller and tech video producer with just over 1 million followers across my social media, and we're speaking because of technology. My name is also Antony as well.
There we go.
Yeah. How are you doing today?
It's great to be with you. And actually, I've seen some of your work.
Oh, nice.
It's terrific. And it's just a pleasure to be able to talk to you today.
Thank you. So this is your second visit to Nigeria, if I understand, and since you became the U.S. Secretary of State. So what would you say brings you to Nigeria today and the African continent? And what would you say are the highlights of your visit so far?
Well, first, when I was thinking about it, it's actually technically my third visit. And here's why. Very early on in this job as Secretary of State, we were still, all of us, dealing with COVID.
Yeah.
But we were doing virtual visits.
Yeah.
And the first virtual visit that I was able to make to Africa was actually to Nigeria as well as to Kenya. So I consider this my third visit. But there's a simple and powerful reason for it. For the United States, Africa shaped our past. It's shaping our present, but it will absolutely shape our future. We're heading to a point where 1 in 4 people on this planet are African. And at the same time, Nigeria, the largest country, the largest economy, the largest democracy, is a natural partner for the United States. And what I've seen on every visit here, including visits that I made in previous times in government, during the Obama administration, for example, I see not only a young population, but I see an extraordinarily energized and innovative population. And that has tremendous promise, not just for Nigeria, but I believe for the world, because I think you can see problems being solved here that will answer questions that people have around the world, not only in Nigeria. Yeah,
I like that you mentioned young population. I'll get to that in a bit. But we all know that technology, innovation, entrepreneurship, those are like the cornerstones of the U.S. economy. And the United States is a leader in the global digital space. In what ways would you say the U.S. government is supporting Africa's growing tech sector? And what would you say the hopes are for the future of the strengthening of the U.S.-Africa economic relations?
I think the tech sector is at the heart of that partnership. Already, we're seeing it flourish. But I think much more can be done to grow it even stronger and bigger. For example, of all of the venture capital that is coming to Africa from the United States, 25% is going to Nigeria. And that's for a good reason, because venture capital that is often focused on innovation, on technology, it sees the incredible human resource that Nigeria has, and it wants to be part of that. At the same time, I think one of the things that we can do, and we are doing in partnership with the Nigerian government, but also in partnership with civil society, is help to build digital skills as well as to help build a digital infrastructure. Soon, thanks to the American private sector, the largest undersea cable in Africa will be connected here in Lagos.
Yeah, I heard of that as well.
Okay, we can talk about that. But I think for the government, there are programs that we're running and instituting to build the partnership. There are ways that our government is mobilizing the private sector capital. Because for the United States, yes, we make big investments as a government, as a country, in everything from infrastructure to technology, to health, of course, through things like PEPFAR, to food security. But as important, and even more important in our case, is our ability to encourage and to support and to leverage private sector investment. That's our comparative advantage. The government has tools to do that, and we're mobilizing them more and more with and for Africa. Now, one other thing that's important, it has to work on both sides. So you need to have, for example, in Nigeria, the strongest possible investment environment in order for that investment to come here. So there are things that can be done in the regulatory space. There are things that can be done in terms of allowing companies to repatriate capital. Of course, the ongoing fight against corruption. All of these things are important to make sure that investment flows and we can really strengthen the technological partnership. Yeah.
Speaking of investment, speaking of venture capital, the Nigerian Fintech ecosystem is one of those places.
Yes.
And it's maintained a growth trajectory for a long time. And 5 out of the 7 unicorns, that's the billion-dollar startups, are from Nigeria, actually. And if we look at the math again, I know you mentioned some statistics there, but 40% of the venture capital is coming from the United States into Africa. And 60% of those African startups are also based in the United States as well. So in what ways would you say the US government is helping the private sector to foster that, the culture of innovation and entrepreneurship in Africa's digital ecosystem?
Well, look, I think the example you just gave of fintech is an incredibly powerful example of what's already happening. And on one level, success breeds success.
Yes.
And that's going to attract even more investment in it, and it builds on itself. But I think what it also tells us very powerfully is this. No one country, no one people, no one part of the world has a monopoly on innovation or on good ideas. On the contrary, it's everywhere. And one of the things that I've been convinced of in traveling around the world for many years is that almost inevitably somewhere, someone has found at least the beginning of an answer to a problem that's shared by people around the world. I saw today, right here in Lagos, some incredible young entrepreneurs and innovators from Nigeria who each was motivated to try to solve a practical problem that is a problem that people may face in many other countries.
Yeah.
For example, having a virtual classroom when people are not able to go to school for one reason or another. I saw that demonstrated.
Yeah.
Being able to use your smartphone in a much more efficient and effective way to buy a car, and not have to go into the auto dealership with all of that sometimes brings with it. Looking at how AI can be used to, for example, process much more efficiently and effectively digital images, including for health. These are things that were, invented right here by young Nigerians, and I'm convinced that they're not only going to be solutions to problems or challenges in Nigeria, but they'll spread around the world. We want to make sure that as a government, we're helping to support our own programs. To strengthen that, again, things like digital literacy, connectivity, so that there's actual digital access. That's hugely important, because what you can't have is countries that are bifurcated between places that have connectivity and places that don't. We have this challenge in the United States, making sure that rural areas are connected. We want to see the same thing happen here in Nigeria.
Yeah. And I like that you mentioned the youth. You mentioned the youth again. This is the second time. And you also mentioned digital technologies. And I just want to ask, digital technologies, they create opportunities for young people. They create opportunities for the entrepreneurial and the innovative population, like Nigeria's populations. However, there are some threats or some risks that it can pose. So that's the increase of disinformation or cyber attacks or ransomware attacks. How would you say the US government is also creating efforts to ensure that the internet is open, safe, and reliable for everyone?
So, we know from long experience that technology is not inherently good or not inherently bad. It's how it's used.
Yes.
Some people have said it's not immoral, it's amoral. And it really depends on whether it's used for good or bad, and what rules, norms, standards, systems do you put in place to maximize the good and to minimize the bad. So, of course, we're working in a whole variety of ways to deal with some of the negative uses of technology. Cybersecurity is critical as bad actors try to abuse the fact that we're connected in so many ways. Dealing with problems like ransomware and disrupting the criminal enterprises and networks that are engaged in that. That's a big part of what we do. But these things have to be done collaboratively with other countries by definition. When you have a system that expands beyond geographic borders, that system is only going to be as strong as the weakest link in the chain. So it's imperative that we have that we work together, that we have cooperation. Now, of course, everyone is rightly focused on artificial intelligence. Yeah. And we want to make sure that, again, when it comes to the development of artificial intelligence, that we maximize the extraordinary potential for good in solving human problems, meeting human challenges. Education, health, climate, you can see the extraordinary potential, but also that we minimize the abuse of the technology, for example, to invade people's privacy, to spread misinformation and disinformation, to make terrible weapons, all these kinds of things. Right now, we're working at the United Nations on a resolution for the entire United Nations, the entire General Assembly, to create a sort of foundational understanding of how we approach artificial intelligence. And we hope to have broad support for that, so that we have something that is open, trustworthy, safe, accessible. All of these things are usually important, but that really does require countries to come together to develop a common understanding. And one last thing, in that, it is absolutely essential that voices from around the world, and particularly from Africa, be a full part of the conversation. It is wrong and misguided to take an approach that limits those who are deciding on what the rules will be, what the standards will be, what the norms will be, to a small group of countries or a few countries that happen in this moment to be producing some of the innovation. So we want that conversation to be broad. We also want it to include multiple stakeholders, not just governments, but civil society, the private sector, academia. That's the best way to get it right. And that's what we're trying to do. Here again, I think Nigeria is a vital partner. We talked about this with President Tinubu just yesterday, precisely because of the innovation that's happening here, precisely because of an incredibly young and dynamic generation that's focused on technology. I think Nigeria's voice is critical for this global conversation. Yeah,
especially with AI. And I know these discussions will keep being had. I have, we're now in the fun part. I have 4 words here.
Okay.
And when I say each word, I want you to say what the first thing is, the first thing that comes to your mind when I mention all these 4 words. So the first one is partnerships.
What comes to mind actually is this trip and Africa, because what we're about is building partnerships with African countries. You know, it used to be said some time ago, the question was, what can we do for Africa? Wrong question. Question is, what can we do with Africa? And that starts with partnerships. One of the things that's so important to us is, you know, when we're making investments around the world, yes, we're investing in infrastructure because it's vital that people be physically connected. But equally, we're making investments, and this is something the United States focuses on knowledge and in knowledge and in transferring that knowledge, transferring expertise. That ultimately is going to, I think, help strengthen other countries and create tremendous opportunity for people.
If you could use one word to answer the next one, trade, just one word.
Fair.
Leadership.
Well, I'm tempted to say the United States, but I think that comes back to the first thing that you said, because I think leadership now is actually defined more than it's ever been before by partnership. Yeah. In other words, no single country, even the United States, which in this moment in history is blessed with so many resources, can do it alone. We can't solve the problems and challenges that Americans have to face without a partnership, without working collaboratively, without doing it together. Just a quick example, climate change. Yeah. We are, the United States now is the number 2 emitter in the world after China. Historically, of course, we've developed our economy in a way that's led to having this effect on the global environment. But even if we do everything right at home in terms of our own transformation, 15% of emissions, we still have to get the other 85%. And that means we have to work in partnership with others. We were talking about technology, the smartphones that so many of us carry in our pockets, the rules, the norms, the standards by which that technology is used. That's not decided by any one country. Yeah. It's decided collaboratively. Yeah. So we have an interest in leadership being partnership more than ever before. Yeah.
And lastly, Africa.
Oh, that's easy. Future.
Yes. Nice. Thank you so much. This was very insightful. Thank you so much.
Great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you as well.
Thanks.